Okay, it's 8:12 and we will get started. Thank you for coming out on Tuesday morning. We're going to learn a little bit about how the collector's office works. Before I start, I want to introduce a couple people from the office in case you don't know them. Kevin Spalding, on my right, is Chief Deputy. Julie Ross, also in the department, is here. She attends these on a regular basis. And most people in the room probably have a better idea of how the tax process works in Greene County. When I talk about the tax process, this is not sales tax, this is not income tax, this is personal property and real estate tax. Those are driven through the county. And the actual process itself, and I brought a little brochure. If you don't have one of these, I'd really recommend you taking one of these. It really is very informative on how the process works at a high level. It begins January 1st and ends December 31st. It goes all year long. Of course, our esteemed guest from the assessor's office here in the second row, they're busy right now collecting assessment forms. So if anyone has not submitted your assessment form, there's still time. So the tax process begins with the assessment form being submitted, assessments being generated, both real and personal property, because that's why I collect real and personal property in the collector's office. And then in the July, August timeframe, the clerk's office gets involved because the next step is for the levies. And I have a slide in here that just shows some levy rates. If you have any questions about what do you pay, depending on where you live, levy rates are on the county collector website. So the clerk's office is engaged in applying levies, receiving the levies, applying levies in the software. And then the final 3 months or so, collector's office really ramps up and gears up once the tax book is delivered from the clerk's office, which by statute is October 31st. So that's just a high level facts and figures. I want to take you through just some numbers to give you an idea of how busy we are during tax season. That's how busy we are. We have really a number of methods where public can contact us. One is calls, and Julie is very involved in that, and others. So November, and again, tax season actually begins November 1st, goes through December 31st. You have 2 months to pay what we call timely without incurring penalty and interest. And I highly encourage don't incur penalty and interest. That's not pleasant. So about 4,000 calls, which is about, and these are calls to the office, and some we don't answer every call. Some are just voice messages that are left. Okay, next one. This doesn't seem to be. So we had, whoops. Okay, that's fine. So in November, total call volume time-wise, we had 145 hours of messages or phone calls that we answered. That's basically 6 full days. In December, as you can tell, the volume goes up almost 3 times, and we had. I'm trying to look at you. I'm getting the up arrow. Yeah. The down arrow. 937 hours of team do math. That's the volume of either messages that were left or time that was spent on the phone. So you can tell that's a pretty serious undertaking, honestly. We mailed over 130,000 letters through E.J. Rice, 171,000 statements. We actually tried to combine personal property and real estate to save postage. So as you can tell, that keeps us busy. We had over 2,500 emails to collector help. Really the takeaway, and that's over 67 business days, the takeaway of all this is we are really busy, as you can imagine, and you can see the lines in the hall. Pay by phone, which is an option we instituted in 23, we had almost really about $1.6 million in pay by phone. Some people don't do internet, some people don't want to drive into the courthouse. So that's turning out to be a pretty good option, almost 7,000, 2,700. In the timeframe just November, December, the office collected over $370 million in personal real estate. Now, of course, we collect, and by statute, by the 15th of the following month, we have to distribute. So collector's office collects and then turns around and gives the money away, so to speak. Just some more stats. We had over 50,000 web payments, $100 million. We had in the processing center, over 44,000 statements, over $100 million came in by the mail, November, December. And just to show you, unfortunately, we're not done at the end of December. In January, we had another 13,000 statements and another almost $40 million that came in January. So really, we ramp up seriously in October. November, December, we're overwhelmed, and into January, and then really into February, we stay busy. So about 4 or 5 months out of the year, the office and everybody in the office pretty fast, just because. And there are other things we do receive. If you have an escrow payment, that's not on here. We got about $70 million in escrow payments. We call it e-payers. We'll electronically transmit the payment versus sending a check or whatever. So takeaway is the office is obviously very busy, as I think everyone in the room knows. And our goal is to service taxpayers as quickly as we can, make the process as simple as we can, because there's obviously a lot of confusion on how this works. But to get payments processed as quickly as we can, I have a slide a little later about that, just to give you an idea. Sorry, thank you. There we go. I apologize, this is kind of small, but the colors, these are total statements processed to date over the past 5 years. So it gives you an idea of changes in the office. And to the left is better. You want to the right is we're behind. And if you look at the orange and the yellow and the gray, those are the three to the right. Orange is 2020, or excuse me, yellow is 2020, gray 21, and orange 2022. So you see, we really weren't processing a lot of statements. We're still processing a lot of statements in January. You notice in 23, which is the blue line, that was a significant shift to the left. So we were processing statements much more timely, not quite so much in 24, the green, but still both are shift to the left. We're processing statements a lot more timely, which really doesn't impact you, but a lot of people, they mail their check and they'll call the next day, why hasn't my check been cashed? And so it's like a vicious cycle where if it takes us 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to process, that tidal wave of calls just builds and builds. So as you can see, we made I think a significant improvement in the processing time in the 23 and 24 timeframe. And taxes collected, obviously it's the same thing. Statements processed, taxes collected are collected and distributed a lot earlier. So as you can see, the green and the blue line, much more quickly, really by end of December into January, we had processed almost everything by mid-January. So again, for the taxpayers, significant improvements. Distribution happened sooner than what it has done in the past. So like I said, the people in the office really worked hard to improve the process. And part of that is just getting the statements and processing them. I'm not going to talk about this. This will put you to sleep. There are a lot of statutes that cover collector's office, assessor's office, really every office, a lot of statutes. So if you really want some nighttime reading, just go to chapter 52 or chapter 139, chapter 140, and you can really educate yourself on the fine points of the collector's office. And I talked about this, just this is a visual. Again, starts with the assessor in January, ends in collector taxes received and distributed. And then a lot more details when the assessor presents. I'm sure they'll talk about the appeal process for real estate if you think your real estate's overvalued, which may happen this year. That's another story. Here is, if you go to countycollector.com, if you're curious what your levy is, because what you pay is driven by two things. One is the assessed value of your personal property or your real estate, and the levies. We all live in about 10 to 12 different taxing local subdivisions. Schools, libraries, cities, on and on. So if you're curious as to what you pay, for example, if you live in Ash Grove, 2024, your levy was 3.6488 per mil, and it's been that way for a few years. In fact, went up slightly from 21 to 22. But if you live in R12, which for most people, Springfield schools, you'll see it's 39888, and it's actually dropped slightly. But that determines what each and every one of us pay. There's one that's not. These are just school districts there. As I said, there are a total of 42 or 43 different taxing jurisdictions. As I said, we each live in about 10 to 12. But through the county, collector's office collects for about 42 or 43. Inform and educate. If you're interested in how the tax process works, there are actually 2 videos on the web page, the homepage. And I'll give Robert credit. He helped a tremendous amount in putting these things together. On the left is just an overview again of the tax process in the state of Missouri, and then on the right is actually how to pay your taxes online. I think it's a fairly straightforward process, but everyone is not always internet literate. So again, Robert's very helpful in putting the one on the right together. It is literally step by step with moving arrows and click this button. So it's simple. I don't think it could get more simple, to tell you the truth. As I said, part of what the office does is try to inform and educate. This brochure, if you'd like one, please feel free. It's a trifold. It explains at a high level how the process works. And as you probably know, Missouri, almost every state taxes real estate. Only 10 to 12 states tax personal property. So when people from the assessor's office go to school, well, so when people move from another state, they don't realize I've got to pay a tax on my trucks, my cars, my planes, my trains, and my toys. And that's the way Missouri works. So again, part of that is just to educate folks. One of the other things that we've done, and I just encourage everyone to follow us on Facebook. We have what are called collector crumbs. And it's basically a weekly or bi-weekly crumb, if you will, that talks about a specific thing within the collector's office. And we start early in the year, talk about assessments and what you as taxpayers need to do. We've got, I think, a couple thousand followers, if I remember correctly. So it's a good site just to remind people, especially when taxes are due or assessment forms are due. And of course, there are different ways to pay. You can actually pay. I talked about phone payments new last year. Pay by phone, pay on the internet. You can pay in person, come into 109, or you can mail a check via mail. We accept credit, debit, and checks. Actually, e-checks are no charge. Credit and debit, there's a charge. And we encourage people to pay online. It makes things a lot easier. It also keeps the volume down in the cashier's office, which really helps everyone. So if you're, just to watch out, if you're paying online, don't wait till December 31st at 10 o'clock at night. Please don't do that, because there's a chance that you're going to get a little bit of a note in January saying we did not receive your payment. You're now paying penalty and interest. It surprises me, I guess it shouldn't, the number of people who will fat finger their checking account, or if you fat finger your routing number, I think the system will kick that back because there are only so many of those. But if you fat finger your checking account or your credit card, then you will not have paid. So I encourage people, don't wait till the last minute, pay December 30th, pay December 29th, and within a day or so, that debit should show up in your checking account. And if that debit doesn't show up, you didn't pay. I encourage you to go back online and pay again, because the system can only accept one payment. So if you paid, it'll show zero balance. But if you didn't pay, your balance will be there. So please don't, and I tell people this, I don't like having those conversations, and nobody in my office likes having those conversations in January about, well, I went online and I paid. In fact, we've had people who will file a protest with the commission, and they'll protest penalty and interest. And of course, I can get all the information I need from the payment processor to show the account number they used, and the account number was wrong. In fact, I've even had payments made on an incorrect account. It was a good account, right bank, but it was not the taxpayer's account. That's always interesting. How'd that happen? So anyway, if you know people, I know people don't like paying taxes. I understand that, but I just encourage, please don't wait. Save yourself some headache and save the collector's office some headache as well, just because. questions? I know there's one question, planted question up front. Oh, you want to put SB 190 on that? Let me talk about SB 190 real quickly. Anyone in the room not familiar or have not heard of the senior citizen tax credit? Generally, I think people, younger people in the room like this crowd wouldn't know anything about it, but 2 years ago in 23, the legislature passed a senior citizen tax credit. What it basically does is it freezes a taxpayer's real estate tax. The assessment process still works. The assessed value goes up. The clerk's office still gets levies. They apply levies, and the bill will go up like it normally does. But for people who have applied and have been deemed eligible, their taxes will be real estate taxes, not personal property, real estate taxes are frozen at the year in which they apply and are deemed eligible. So for people who applied in 2024, that's the real estate tax they will pay going forward, but for a couple of unusual occurrences. Last year was our first year to commence this, to start with the clerk's office. Clerk's office was handling that and then transition to the collector's office. Total for 24, we received about a little over 15,000 applications. So as you can imagine, we were swamped. And deadline was September 30th, which was right before tax season. So it was really, the building was swamped. If you notice the lines, that was what that was. This year, the second year, we're actually taking applications for people who turn 62. That's usually the point, the catalyst that someone can apply. 62 years, so we're receiving applications, and we're also receiving reapplications because by statute, I think that we as a county need to verify that you, the original applicant in 24, still meet the criteria. One is you own the home in which you live in, it is your primary residence. You get one primary residence. The other is your secondary residence. You get one primary residence. So if you own a home here or the home at the lake, you get to choose which one is your primary residence. You have to pay taxes. You have to be a taxpayer, and you also have to be current on your taxes. You have to be 62, which is a major change in the original bill. And as I said, you have to be the owner of your home. So if you're renting or something like that, you don't qualify. Or if you have rental properties, those properties don't qualify, you get one. So as I said, oh, there we go. Last year we got 15,000 applications. Greene County was the first to adopt. Again, the real estate taxes are frozen. And we've made a lot of improvements. Again, I realize it doesn't apply to everyone. You may have either friends or relatives for which it does. You can actually go on, you can come into the courthouse, 110 and still apply or reapply. You can also go online. That is, again, I don't think that could be much easier to go online and apply. If you have questions. A lot of misconceptions are still out there, but let me back up. Before I do that, one of the point I make is the legislature passed the law in 23. The next step is up to, for the most part, the governing body, which is the county commission, to actually enact the bill. The 114 counties in the state of Missouri, there are probably about 20 who've actually enacted Senate Bill 190. So we are on the leading edge. Greene County was actually the first county to adopt Senate Bill 190. Christian County has also done that. They're doing it a little differently because Senate Bill 190 just sets the broad parameters on how to execute the law, but within the county, there are a lot of options. For example, in some counties, it's the county assessor that's actually doing the heavy lifting, and others is the county clerk, and others is the county collector. So it really depends on how the county wants to execute it. But across the state, there's a lot of misconception. There still is some level of misunderstanding. People think, well, once I apply, I never have to pay real estate taxes again, which is not true. Just go back to that death and taxes thing. And they think it applies to personal property, which it does not. It's real estate only. And again, you get one primary residence. So as it's still a number of misunderstanding. People last year thought, well, my bill went up in 24, and we explained to them that 24 was the base year. Just like people who applied this year. The year that you apply is your base year. You will pay whatever is due in your base year. It's going forward is where the tax will be frozen. Keep like going backwards now. 15,429. Most were accepted. We had a few. We had a couple of really creative applications. One guy in Arkansas was trying to apply for a home here, and that doesn't work, especially having an Arkansas license. That's a problem. And this year, as I said, we're notifying people who applied, 24. We as a county are not required to do that. However, if you think about this, you know what's going to happen. There'll be quite a few people who apply in 24. They forgot to apply or reapply, in 25. So if you don't reapply, you lose that basis, that credit, that 2024, you can reapply again. So the county decided, which I agree with, to notify citizens who applied, you need to reapply in order to keep that credit good. So we are getting swamped with reapplication. As you can imagine, 15,000 applications, even though the re-app is very short, we're getting swamped with reapplications. But last year, the deadline was September 30th. This year, it's June the 30th. So the cutoff is much sooner, which helps collector's office a lot versus running right up to tax season. Any questions? I knew there's okay. Let me take this guy in front.
I've seen the reapplication postcards that were mailed out. And I think they're very streamlined, and I like them a lot. They do have a question on there: have any improvements been made? What is the threshold or the trigger for your office to notify someone like the assessor's office that, hey, we might need to go revisit this property?
If anyone actually admits they made an improvement.
Exactly.
Okay.
And as I mentioned earlier, there are two things that would trigger an increase in that real estate. One is if someone makes what I would consider a material improvement. Now, what that is up to discussion. For example, they build a 2-car garage, they add a deck, they put in a pool. That's a material improvement. So your real estate taxes will reset, not for the entire parcel, but for that incremental improvement that will be added onto the base. But that is that's something, and I've got a couple of other situations I need to talk to you about. Like how we
Well, I mean, we've gotten calls that, hey, I put a new roof on, we had hail damage, I replaced my roof. Do I need to write that down? Do I need to, my deck was warped and damaged. It's been there for 20 years. I replaced the deck, same footprint of deck.
See, my opinion, that is a maintenance, long-term maintenance. And if I were doing it, but again, statute doesn't dictate this. It really is up to the counties to make the decision what is or what is not. So to me, if you're putting on a new roof after 20 years, that's really not an improvement. That's an ongoing maintenance item. It's expensive. I would not consider that to be an improvement. It's a maintenance item. But that's where this gray area is. And like I said, I've got a couple of other situations that are really gray that we need to talk about. So one is, again, the material improvement, or the other is if there is a vote of a levy. So if there's a levy increase, and levies, as you looked at that chart, will go up and down every year. But if there is an initiative that's taken to the ballot, for example, usually debt service levy will go to the ballot, and if that is voted on and approved, then that would increase real estate taxes. And the reason being is, if you're a voter, you shouldn't get to vote for a levy increase and have no skin in it. If you could actually, if you went the other way, you could vote for a levy increase and I don't have to pay this. Somebody else is going to pay the bill. So if there's a levy that's on the ballot and is approved, then that incremental increase in the levy because of that ballot initiative would have an impact on that frozen real estate value. Like I said, those don't happen very often. Some of them. But contact information is at room 110, which is usually a line of people outside. So if people want to come in and reapply, or apply or reapply, come into 110. The phone number, the 380-5889, of course, property tax credit at greencountymo.gov. So we have a number of different options for seniors to apply or reapply. And again, encourage if anyone has any questions to contact the office. We're actually happy to help. Oh, sorry, there's one other question in the back. Yes, ma'am.
You actually answered it about the tax levy if it's voted in. So.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Will you be able to calculate the difference between the benefit that they're getting to show that?
Yes, actually, one of the very few things that the bill 7190 required, and is of the collector's office, is whenever a statement comes out, we all get the statements every year. By law, collector's office has to show the credit. Because if you look on the top right-hand side, it shows the assessed value and all this sort of stuff, and it shows what your new bill for 2025 will be. And everyone's bill in 2025 will be higher than last year. But for those who apply in 24 and were eligible, I'll probably do on the left side and the right side, I have to display the actual credit. So if your bill this year or 24 is $1,000, let's say it goes up to $1,100 in 25. I will have to display, you now owe $1,100, but you as an eligible taxpayer receive a $100 credit. So the 1,100 minus 100 takes you back to 1,000, which is your 2024 amount. So that was really one of the very few requirements of something that had to be done this time. Because that's going to be the obvious question: how much money did I save? And say the other thing, not that this impacts this crowd, that is required of the offices is to notify the political subdivisions the impact, the financial impact the Senate Bill 190. Whereas last year there was no impact because that was the base year, but this year there will be an impact. The assessor and collector have already received an email, I forgot where that came from, might be Republic, asking about the impact because they're going through their budget season right now. So we've got to come up with just a high level. This is what the approximate number will be. Of course, the initial year, this first year for 2025, the only savings will be the increase from 2024. So could be modest, but if the assessor raises everybody by 15%, then depending on what your real estate tax was, if it was $1,000, that's $150. So probably one of the misconceptions is I'm going to save a lot of money and I'm going to take a round the world trip cruise on the money I'm saving, and that's not the way this works. But after you've been in the home 10 years or 20 years, that becomes a noticeable credit because it bills usually every odd year for the reassessment. So for people who are wondering why did I not get more money? Well, wait 10 years or 20 years and you notice. So that will be the process. Any other questions? We've got a few minutes left.
Yeah, so I noticed you had almost 9,000 calls in December, and 2,000 plus were paid by phone. What are the other 7,000 usually? Or why do people?
Oh no, the pay by phone is not the call.
Oh, it's not.
There's a different line they call.
Okay, so why are people calling you? What kind of questions?
I'll turn that over to Julie.
Well, Scott and I are normally processing payments. We're never did all that. They just want to know where's my bill, how much it's going to be. The people 62 and over are the ones who are very responsible. They've been saving their money all year, and they're the ones here in line first. Calls are mostly about where's my bill, how much is my bill, and then you have the senior tax credit exponentially added to that. It's just taxpayers wanting to be responsible.
A lot of times, and this would be probably more in November than December, but could be in December. My goal has always been to mail statements as early as possible. And for various reasons, they've always come out in the last half of November. And so some people remember receiving their bill on November 1st, which I don't think that's ever happened, but that's neither here nor there. But where's my bill and how do I pay? So just help guide taxpayers. Your bill's online, or you can call and pay by phone. So just some general, I'll say misunderstandings, but just not having sufficient knowledge in how the process works.
And you still have people who want a waiver. They're still licensing their cars. So they happen in spot.
It's just everything with the sun. Yes, sir.
Is there like a list of properties that have the credit? If the homeowner asks, did I actually get it?
Right, that's the big question now. People will reapply and gee, I never received my confirmation. We actually keep last year was an access database. I guess we're still doing of the parcels because we take that and we roll that into the software and we flag the account because the calculation now for that account now has to have this minus, this credit applied. So we can pull up, and if although you can't see it for us, if you go into the county collections, which is software, for someone who's been approved, there's a little red flag that I think it has the date on it, but it shows, okay, this account has been approved. So we can tell by just looking at the account.
For 24.
For 24.
There's the Adobe file that everything's going into now, and that cannot be seen by the average bear.
Right, yeah, this was obviously for inside use only, so we do have a list of who, and we use that obviously for the mailing list for postcards. So I had about 2,000 or so people who had reapplied prior to sending the postcards. We had about 13,000 postcards.
I am not recommending people actually like just mail it in because the mail's super sketchy. So that's just my personal thing. It's like if they're elderly, have your son or daughter or granddaughter come and take a picture of it, email it to us, or have them drop it in our Dropbox by 110. Mail's super sketch. If they can take it into Price Cutter, I've called Price Cutter a little mail thing. They'll charge you $5 to get it to us, but that does not give them any confirmation. That's an extra $4. So just mail is bad right now.
I would not avoid the USPS. So online, online, I think is better. That Greene County or property tax credit at greencountymo.gov. You know it has been sent. You take a picture and mail it, and you'll get a confirmation. So if you have any questions, as I said, please don't hesitate just to call the office or ask. I never received this or that or the other. Happy to follow up. Although right now I think we've got 2,000 emails in the inbox, so we're behind on processing those. Yes, ma'am.
Do they get an email or a letter back letting them know if they've been approved?
Last year we did, for those who were applying, we did either email, if they emailed us, we'd email the confirmation. If they sent it snail mail, we'd snail mail it back. So everyone receives some sort of confirmation that your application has been approved, or received, reviewed, and approved. So that way it closes the loop, because otherwise we know we should get calls if someone doesn't know.
And it's about a 6-week turnaround right now because of the volume.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are trying to get back to every person.
Well, I'm thinking about it time, so thank you very much for your questions and your attendance, and have a great Tuesday.